I'm Jason, UFC, and today we have a story about UFC number one ranked middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis explained why he did not attend UFC 293 to sit cage side. This is what Dricus Du Plessis says. If Israel Adesanya knew anything about living in Africa, oh goodness, here we go again. Let's just try to skip some of this, right? In the main event of UFC 293, a paper event stage in Sydney, Australia, Sean Strickland successfully challenged the and defeated Israel Adesanya. Blah blah blah. Since then, one prominent discussion has surrounded who Sean Strickland will defend his belt out for the first time, with many eliminating an immediate rematch with Israel Adesanya from the discussion. Dricus Du Plessis and Jared Cannonier have somewhat led the charge. Okay, among those backing Jared Cannonier claim is Sean Strickland's head coach, who believe that Jared, the Killer Gorilla Cannonier, helped his case by traveling to Sydney, Australia, and weighing in as the backup fighter for UFC 293 headliner. Now, I'm a MMA casual. I did hear that Jared Cannonier was the backup, but I did not know that he actually traveled to Australia and he weighed in as the backup fighter, and he has a victory over Sean Strickland. While Jared Cannonier was in attendance, the same can't be said for Dricus Du Plessis. Okay. During a recent appearance on the MMA Hour, Dricus Du Plessis looked back on the division's latest championship contest and sought to explain his absence in Sydney, Australia. Let me see. Although he insisted that he wanted to be cage side at UFC 293, Dricus Du Plessis said it wasn't viable owing to the difficult process of acquiring a visa for Australia as a South African. Here we go again. Dricus Du Plessis also used the fact to send another jab at the way of Israel Adesanya regarding the root of their feud, suggesting that Israel Adesanya would have known that if he resided in Africa. Okay, let's get to this. Okay, here we go. This is what Dricus Du Plessis says. That's one thing I want to tell to Izzy. Listen, I do want to preface this by saying, even though I'm an MMA casual, I did watch this interview on MMA Fighting with Ariel Helwani. And like Dricus Du Plessis, before he said this, he looked like he sat up straight and he got like directly in the camera. That's all you can see is his face, and this is what he said. That's one thing I want to tell Izzy. Listen, if you knew anything about living in Africa, you would realize what it takes to get a visa to Australia being a South African. Dricus Du Plessis says it doesn't happen overnight. You don't get a visa in 2 or 3 weeks. You just don't. You don't even get a visa in 4 weeks. It's extremely hard. And what would have happened? I would have got there and saw him lose. Dricus Du Plessis said, no, it doesn't work like that. People are like, just go to Australia. Do you know how hard it is for a South African to get a visa for Australia? It's extremely hard. I would have loved to be there, definitely. Okay, here we go. Let me see. Anything else going on with that? No, I guess. Okay, so, Dricus Du Plessis going back to, the fact that he's from Africa and Israel Adesanya doesn't know anything about Africans. I guess that's what his argument is. But we all know that after COVID, I probably shouldn't have said that word on YouTube algorithm, but after 2020, Australia was one of the strictest countries with a lockdown and not allowing anyone outside of the country to come in. It's 3 years later. I guess their rules are still pretty strict. There are a few countries in the world where if you could fly into the country and get a visa at the airport. Australia, I guess, isn't one of them, and I guess it takes a few weeks to get a visa. Should he have been there? Yes and no. we definitely see the contender, number one contender, enter the octagon after the champion wins. We saw Sean O'Malley enter the octagon after Aljamain Sterling defeated Henry Cejudo. So it helped his case as being the number one contender. But we also saw Israel Adesanya enter the cage when Dricus Du Plessis won, right? So if Israel Adesanya would have lost and then Dricus Du Plessis get in the cage and you have Sean Strickland in the cage, like that's just way too many personalities going in there. I personally like the idea of Dricus Du Plessis still being the number one contender, but truthfully, you have to look at it, and Jared Cannonier probably should be the number one contender, right? Because he has a victory over Sean Strickland, because he did go and weigh in at the UFC 293 weigh-ins as the backup fighter, right? Like, so he cut weight for this fight. He was ready. He was literally ready to go. So for that reason, it could be Jared Cannonier as the number one contender. But to me, either way, you don't really lose. Like, it's like if you have Cannonier versus Sean Strickland, or if you have Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, both of those fights, to me, you can make a 50-50 argument as to why both of those two fighters make the most sense as the number one contender. Personally, as an MMA casual, I don't want to see Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. I don't have any hate for Israel Adesanya, but he was at home. He lost on the scorecard 4-1, 5-1, and most people scorecard. So I don't think he deserves a rematch. Not, like I said, no hate against Israel Adesanya, but when you have a new champion, the division opens up. You have Sean Strickland with a loss versus Jared Cannonier. Sean Strickland has never faced Dricus Du Plessis, who's 6-0 in the UFC, just defeated Robert Whittaker by second round TKO. So two really, 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 really good contenders. I'm not going to mention Paulo Costa versus Khamzat Chimaev. I think that fight would have made more sense as a number one contender if Israel Adesanya was still champion. If Khamzat Chimaev defeats Paulo Costa, you could say, it's not great, but yeah, he could be the number one contender. Khamzat Chimaev is undefeated, but to me, with Khamzat Chimaev being unranked and Paulo Costa coming off of a victory last year over Luke Rockhold, I don't think either one of those two guys, should leapfrog Jared Cannonier or Dricus Du Plessis for the number one contender, with Sean Strickland being the champion. But let me know your opinion of this story. I'm Jason, UFC. Today we had a story about Dricus Du Plessis explains why he did not attend UFC 293 to sit cage side. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.